Hi everyone! Welcome to Art Story Lab. My name is Haejin. What comes to your mind when you hear the word boudoir? It's not that often that I hear the word today, but on the rare occasions I do hear it, it's almost always of women getting their boudoir photography done, where they pose seductively in sexy lingerie in a secret bedroom somewhere. But did you know that the word boudoir is an 18th century invention? It comes from the French word bouder, which means to pout and sulk. Invented in the late 1700s, the word boudoir literally means a place where you sulk.
What?
So why did these 18th century French people need a room specifically designed for pouting and sulking? What did first boudoirs look like? To answer these questions, we have to first look at what houses looked like in early modern Europe. Before the 18th century, ordinary people, simply put, didn't have rooms to themselves. For most people in society, including even the affluent ones, cooking, eating, and sleeping all took place in one room, and there wasn't very much distinction between private and public activities in homes. Women rarely, if ever, had rooms intended for their personal use. Their position in society was defined primarily through their relations to other family members. In other words, women's roles as wives and mothers completely outshined their status as individuals. That meant that people thought that women simply didn't need rooms of their own because all they had to do was take care of their husbands and children. Although this etching is by no means an accurate representation of an actual domestic interior, you get a sense of how there really isn't any division between private and public spaces of the home, with a bed placed right next to the dining table where the entire family of a couple and their 5 children dined together. And by the way, is it just me or does this pregnant lady look petrified, surrounded by her children and husband and weighed down by her familial duties? Help! For queens like Marie Antoinette, the social conventions were even more stringent because on top of their roles as king's consorts and mothers to future kings, they were expected to be visible to the public at all times, giving them even less control over their private lives, if they even existed. Then gradually, beginning in the 18th century, the rich and the powerful began to value this thing called privacy. And they began building little rooms in their lavish abodes where they could be alone or in intimate company with few other people. Elite women, and we're talking very top of the social hierarchy as in queens and duchesses, started claiming little rooms in their homes to pray and to read religious texts. Then they started using these rooms to do whatever they wanted. Dozing off while reading books, playing music, reading letters and reminiscing about lovers, having a sexy rendezvous with a guy, drinking tea and enjoying a snack, hanging out with BFFs including furry ones and doing needlework, and getting glammed up. In short, all the things that we now consider private activities that they couldn't really do in private. And that is how the term for a room where you sulk or the boudoir came into being. In these small private rooms built exclusively for them, women finally had the freedom to pout and sulk in private if they wanted to. By 1770, when the Austrian Habsburg Archduchess named Marie Antoinette married the Dauphin Louis Auguste, later Louis XVI, the boudoir became a trendy new addition to mega mansions, where elite patrons spared no expense to build out their architectural fantasy of the most luxurious and stylish decorations. Marie Antoinette had boudoirs created for herself in the Château de Fontainebleau, an ancient residence of the Bourbon dynasty that the court visited every autumn for a hunting trip. But the queen, who was not a fan of hunting, had 2 boudoirs made for herself to pass her time while everyone was out in the forest. The second of the 2 boudoirs built for Marie Antoinette, with windows facing the Garden of the Queen, also known as the Garden of Diana, was previously a private room for her predecessor, Queen Marie Leczinska, decorated in the prevailing style of the 1740s. But it was too outdated for the fashion-conscious queen that Marie Antoinette was. So in 1786, she had it redecorated from floor to ceiling in the trendy style called the neoclassical arabesque, meaning the visual style that was inspired by the Greco-Roman antiquity. The term neoclassical literally means new classical. The word arabesque denotes patterns of scrolling and interlacing foliage and tendrils that originated from ornaments in Islamic architecture. Details like the cornice, rectilinear panels, and ornamental motifs such as whimsical grotesque creatures, fancy vessels, mythological figures, and cameos are all elements of this neoclassical arabesque. It's obvious that no expense was spared in embellishing this space. Every square inch of the surface, every single detail was carefully thought out. The iridescent white gold leaf covering the wall panels to imitate the sheen of pearls, the white marble mantelpiece with the lintel decorated with a sinuous bow intertwining with ivy branches and a quiver of arrows to bring the theme of Diana the Huntress from the garden outside into the interior, and the preponderance of flowers and paintings to please a queen who was known for her taste for fragrant blossoms. Even the underside of the platforms on which the plaster sculptures sit and every little ovals on the coving connecting the walls to the ceiling are filled with multiple types of flowers. Everything is over the top and exquisitely crafted. And lest you forget for whom this room was designed, Marie Antoinette's monogram with interlaced M and A marked the room on the friezes over the doors. Even the furniture was all designed exclusively for this boudoir. Unfortunately, during the French Revolution, the chateau was raided and a lot of the original furniture was destroyed or lost. But some pieces have survived, like this fire screen with embroidered birdcage and gilding in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or these matching trough-shaped table and roll-top writing desk by Marie Antoinette's favorite furniture makers. These are covered in mother of pearl. That's the shiny substance covering the inside of some mollusk shells, y'all. And neither photos nor video footage will ever do justice to their drop-dead gorgeous, out-of-this-world pearlescent glow. The entire room is made to glow like the inside of a shell. So imagine how this subtle luminosity would have been animated by candlelights flickering and the mirrors reflecting them. If you're not totally blown away by the beauty of the decor, you might just remember to look up and find Aurora, the goddess of dawn, painted on the ceiling and ushering in new morning light surrounded by flying putti. Now, here's a weird thing about this room's decoration. Over the 4 doors in this tiny room, there are 4 pairs of sculpted goddesses. These female figures are 8 of the 9 muses, who in Greek mythology gave inspiration to Apollo, the god of poetry. The 8 goddesses sculpted here are, and they all have super awesome names, Urania for astronomy and Polyhymnia for rhetoric, Euterpe for music and Terpsichore for dance, Melpomene for tragedy and Thalia for comedy, and Clio for history and Erato for lyric poetry. All carry their identifying attributes, for example Erato with a lyre, Urania with her globe. But in this configuration, there's one muse missing, Calliope, the muse of epic poetry. Why is Calliope missing in this sculptural ensemble? Could this be because Marie Antoinette wanted to imagine herself in the guise of Calliope, the muse who inspired her listeners with powerful eloquence and harmonious voice? So that when she was in the room, her presence completed the ensemble of all 9 muses? In addition to the freedom that this private room afforded her to live out her daydreams as a classical muse, the boudoir surely regaled her with pleasures for all her 5 senses. The soft glow of pearlescent, gilded, and mirror surfaces, the sound of the music playing in the space as the sculpted muses Euterpe and Terpsichore demonstrate, the perfume of thousands of painted and real flowers filling the room, the decadent feel of smooth furniture surfaces and silk fabric upholstery, and the taste of delectable treats and beverage the queen might have enjoyed here. With all that, it's not too difficult to imagine Marie Antoinette falling in love with this room upon seeing it for the first time in 1787.
Oh la la!
A space of her own, her little cozy and sumptuous domain in the huge, dark, centuries-old royal chateau so heavy with dynastic legacy. In this boudoir, she could be herself without having to worry about how to behave properly like a good queen. But Marie Antoinette's predilection for privacy, Her desire to spend her days away from the public as French queens were expected to, and her audacity to flout the conventions of proper queenship ultimately led to her precipitous downfall in public perception. Even until the end of her reign, people couldn't look past her origin as an Austrian Habsburg, an old rival of French Bourbons. And rumors circulated that she was a monster and a tribbit, that's 18th century speak for lesbian, because she loved to spend so much of her time with her girlfriends in these small private rooms rather than being a good queen under the watchful eyes of her subjects. And as we all know, she faced her ultimate demise on the guillotine at the height of the terror in 1793, just 7 years after the Fontainebleau boudoir was completed. In looking at Marie Antoinette's boudoir, I am of course impressed by her power and taste that led to the creation of one of the most exquisite spaces in early modern Europe. But I also think about what power it might have meant for a woman to be by herself in her own room when none was allowed to her. What does it mean for us today to have a space to call our own, to have it decorated to reflect our taste, our aspirations, our ways of understanding the world? What do our private spaces tell about who we are? And do they have the power to change the course of our fate as Marie Antoinette's boudoir did? Special thanks to the Château de Fontainebleau for their kind permission for me to share this video. Thanks for watching! See you next time on Art Story Lab. Thank you.